This is a B5 video looking at some triple content about plant hormones. So first of all, we're starting to talk about trophisms. Okay, a trophism is a response to a stimulus, and that stimulus could be light, it could be water, or it could be gravity. We don't actually have to look at how plants respond to water, we just have to look at light and gravity. If the movement of the plant is towards the stimulus, it's a positive trophism, and if it's away from the stimulus, we call it a negative trophism. If you remember nothing else, remember this phrase: auxin in shoots speeds up growth, auxin in roots slows down growth. Okay, and that will all become clear, and we'll come back to that again at the end. So here we've got a plant, and the light is coming from directly above, and so the plant is growing up towards the light. There are auxins, which are plant hormones, in the tip of the growing shoot, and these encourage the growth of cells in the shoot of the plant. They're also found in the roots of the plant, but we don't talk about that when we're talking about light. So this is the process of phototrophism, the response to light. So here we can see that the light is shining just from one side. We learnt way back in primary school that plants grow towards the light. We can put a plant by the window and we see it grows towards the light. But why does that happen? That's what we're going to look at now. So the plant, there it is, growing towards the light after a certain amount of time, and it's because the auxin in that shoot moves to the shaded side of the shoot. Okay, so the shaded side, the cells grow faster, making the bright side bend towards the light. So basically on the left hand side there, okay, I'll just point to it there, we get a build-up of auxin. Those cells grow faster, so we end up with a bending towards the light, and then the plant will be able to get more light for photosynthesis. In this situation here, we've got, and this links to the required practical, we've got three situations. We've got a plant that is just growing normally, nothing done to the shoots. The light's coming in from the right hand side there. Plant B has had the tips of the shoots cut off, so the auxin is no longer there. And then we have the tips of the shoots covered in foil. So the shoots are still underneath those foil caps. Now in plant A, we will expect the plant to bend towards the light. In plant B, we will expect no growth because the auxin has been removed, because the top of the shoots have been removed. And with the foil caps, the auxin can't respond to the light, so the plant in pot C will grow straight up. Looking at geotrophism now. Geotrophism, also referred to as gravitrophism. The exam board will accept both of those, so geotrophism or gravitrophism, and this affects the shoots and the roots. So we'll go back to that phrase: auxin in shoots speeds up growth, auxin in roots slows down growth. So let's see what that means. And I should say at this point that because the shoots are growing against gravity, we call that a negative trophism, and because the roots are growing towards gravity, we call it a positive trophism. The phototrophism was a positive trophism. So here's our plant. It's fallen over. This could be a palm tree because they don't have very good roots, that's fallen over and then it's kind of bending back up away from the ground. It could be any kind of plant that's fallen over in a storm and then able to regrow back up towards the roots towards gravity and the shoots away from gravity. So this is the response we get. We'll talk about the shoot first of all. So the auxin builds up on the lower side of the shoot here, causing those cells to grow faster. Because those cells have grown faster, it bends up away from gravity. Now this exam question is always going to be talking about a plant in the dark. So you cannot refer to light in any way. You can't say that the plant goes to where light might be or anything like that. It is purely growing against the force of gravity. It's a negative trophism where the auxin's going to that lower side, causing those cells to grow faster, bending up away from gravity. Now in the shoots, we said that the auxin speeds up growth. In the roots, it slows down growth. Okay, so the auxin in the roots actually builds up again on this lower side here, causing those cells to grow slower And so therefore these roots up here, they're not actually speeding up their growth, but relative to the shoots at the roots at the bottom that are growing slower, they're able to grow a bit faster and get back into the soil, and that's a positive trophism because it's going towards gravity. So let's just make that clear. The auxin builds up in the lower side of the roots, makes that part grow slower, so the top of the roots comes down growing relatively faster, not actually faster, but relative to the slower growing roots, and bed back down into the soil. So let's look at that original phrase. Auxin in shoots speeds up growth. So the auxin builds up here, speeds up the growth to grow the shoot up. And auxin in roots slows down the growth. It builds up here, slowing the growth of the roots so that they can bed back down into the soil. So auxin in shoots speeds up growth, auxin in roots slows down growth. Let's take a last look then at other uses of hormones in plants. So auxin is the hormone we've been talking about in plants. It's also found in rooting powders. So when we take our cuttings, which is an example of asexual reproduction and an example of cloning, we cut sections of the shoots from plants, we can dip them into rooting powder which contains auxin and then repot them, and it's a really cost-effective way of growing new plants. The cutting has exactly the same genetic information as the original plant, and we can grow identical plants. Gibberellins are useful in starting seed germination, promoting flowering and increasing fruit size, so they can be used as plant hormones for those purposes. And then when we take fruit from trees, because a lot of our food now doesn't actually come necessarily locally, say for example we want to have fruit that's out of season, we might see on the supermarket shelves that the food's come from Morocco or it's come from Spain. If it was taken off the tree and ripe at the time, by the time it arrived in our supermarket, it would already be starting to go off and to rot. So the food is actually, or the fruit is taken from the tree before it's ripened. It's then sprayed with ethene, and that ripens it on transit. So while it's being transported from one country to another, it's then ripening, so it's ready and at the right stage of ripeness when we get it in the supermarket. I hope you found that useful. Thank you.